We begin beyond the continent from Europe. The European Union has dismissed U.S. President Donald Trump's claim that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is a dictator, reaffirming Ukraine's status as a democracy. Speaking in Brussels, EU spokesperson Stefan de Kiersmaker insisted that Ukraine's leadership is the product of free, fair and democratic elections, a standard, he noted, that cannot be said for Vladimir Putin's Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump had labeled Zelensky a dictator, further escalating tensions between the two countries. Trump made accused Zelensky of manipulating Joe Biden and falsely blaming Ukraine for starting the war with Russia. Trump's remarks came after Washington launched peace efforts with Moscow to end the Kremlin's three-year war. His sharp criticism of Zelensky has sparked concerns across Europe, with fears that the U.S. may be sidelining Kiev in a rush to bid for peace. However, the EU had made its position clear. Both Ukraine and Europe must be involved in any negotiations over the future of the war.
Fair and democratic elections. Ukraine is a democracy. Putin's Russia is not.
Donald Trump's top security advisor on Thursday urged Kiev to cool its rhetoric describing Ukraine's criticism of the United States as unacceptable. United States National Security Advisor Mike Waltz also urged Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to sign a minerals deal, pushed by the White House. Waltz was referring to a proposed agreement that would give the U.S. access to vast accounts of Ukrainian natural resources, as the new president insists on getting a return on American aid sent to Kiev as it fights off a Russian invasion. Zelensky rejected that deal over the weekend, arguing that it does not offer his country security guarantees 3 years into the war. Waltz described the mineral deal as the best security guarantee that could ever hope for, much more than another pallet of ammunition, arguing it would see the United States invested in the country. And Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of wanting to become an emperor of the world and chime in on all countries in public policies against migrants. Lula's comments come after Trump lashed out at Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky, branding him a dictator and blaming him for Russia's invasion of his country. He noted that post-World War II democracy has been an example of the best governance of the last 70 years. He called on the U.S. president to respect other countries' sovereignty. Lula, who has not spoken with Trump since he took office in January, reiterated that the United States was an important commercial partner to Brazil and asked for greater gestures of friendship. And the already tense relationship between former President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky took a sharp turn this week, raising questions about the future of U.S. support for Ukraine and hopes for peace. For News Central, international correspondent Afia Hagen has more.
On his social media platform, labeling Zelensky a dictator without elections, accusing him of pressuring the U.S. into funding a war that couldn't be won.
A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Gotta move fast.
Trump's comments echo Kremlin narratives, overlooking the fact that Ukraine's elections were postponed under martial law after Russia's invasion. Zelensky's frustration with Trump has been growing all week, but it boiled over after Zelensky told reporters at his office in Kyiv that Trump was living in a web of disinformation. Their rocky history dates back to Trump's first impeachment, when he pressured Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden. Now Trump is tying his criticisms together, accusing both Biden and Zelensky of riding a gravy train of U.S. aid. Trump's remarks have rattled allies. French President Emmanuel Macron hosted emergency talks, warning that Russia poses an existential threat to Europe. Macron will be in Washington next week for a meeting, as will British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who has said he would be willing to send troops to act as peacekeepers in Ukraine. Some Republican allies claim Trump's strategy aims to pressure Europe into boosting defence spending. But with Trump calling for peace on uncertain terms and tensions with Zelensky rising, the path forward for US foreign policy and Ukraine's defence remains unclear. Trump is increasingly casting himself in the role of peacemaker, no matter the cost, overlooking the frayed Western alliances and the upending of US foreign policy. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagan.
Now for more on this, I'm joined by Lester Wilcox. He is a foreign affairs analyst joining us right now. You're welcome, Mr. Wilcox. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. I can hear you clearly.
Great. Now, President Trump has accused the his Ukrainian counterpart of being a dictator, but it's the same label Trump's critics have also thrown at him. So how do you see, or how do you weigh this, the two terms, let me put it that way?
I think Trump is trying to use his usual rhetoric to rattle the world, or to expose some of his already beginning to failed campaign promises to the Americans. Well, Trump said he was going to end the war in 24 hours after he took office. Right now, he's confused as to how to start the war. I mean, how to even start to end the war. And so everybody knows Trump to be very, very rhetorical. So Trump is using rhetorics in order to, I'm sure, in order to be able to find his way around to see how he can get back on track to begin to want to know what to do about the Ukraine war. I mean, everybody's aghast. Even his some of his Republican party members and supporters, they are appalled as directors of Trump. I mean, Trump has been known to be very, very rhetorical. I mean, it's unheard of in the history of American-Soviet relationship, Russia relationship, that an American president will be romancing so deeply with Russia, and equal people. I mean, two countries with different geopolitical interests. I mean, it is unheard of. Whatever relationship that existed between Putin and Trump, which was part of what was exposed in his first term as president, he has brought it to the second term, and that secret is still there, and everybody is still wondering how that secret is going to be, is going to be resolved. So for him to see Ukraine as the whipping boy in this instance, in order for him to for whatever favors he wants from Russia, I mean, Russia just did me a favor by releasing a convicted criminal, somebody that carried drug into Russia. Just did him that favor as an, I will call it as a PRO, I mean, as a PRO stunt. They released somebody, and so he felt that he's having a leeway with Russia, and as such, he can concede a lot of things to Russia, even to the detriment of his long-time allies. I mean, the Americans and the Europeans, they have long-time bilateral military and strategic relationship. So for Trump to want to now sacrifice and trade that on the altar of friendship with Russia, I mean, you can have good relationship with Russia, but not to sacrifice the core values that Americans have held over the years. We didn't start today. This core value has been there since Second World War. And the Americans and the Europeans have always been together on every issue. So for what Trump is doing right now is aghast to the whole world. I mean, even Americans, today I have some Democratic Congress members and senators begin to react for the first time negatively about their champion Trump. So the world should be set for a new bumper ride for the next 4 years.
Well, yes, indeed, he did say that he was going to end the war in hours, but it's been weeks after he's been sworn in. Do you think there's any resolution in sight?
And they will not have a resolution if you continue this way, because you see, you don't ride rough on anybody. Ukraine is a sovereign country, or whatever it is. It might be a weaker nation to Russia, but that for 3 years, Ukraine was able to withstand the Russian aggression. I mean, Putin has thought that he will have a weekend, just a run over of Ukraine, capture Kyiv, arrest and kill Zelensky, and then install a puppet government. But for 3 years, it's been a ding-dong affair. you know, and so that shows the fact that despite Ukraine being a smaller military power to Russia, they can also hold their own. And so it is in Americans' best interest not to upset that apple cart, because Americans generally, Trump is not America. Americans generally are leaning towards Ukraine because Ukraine is not the aggressor. Unfortunately, I don't know how Trump came about the fact that Ukraine was the aggressor, was the one that caused the war. In 2014, Russia woke up and annexed Crimea, part of Ukraine. The world did not do anything because they felt, okay, we can still manage with that. Now, from there, you now went into Ukraine, amassed your troop, went into Ukraine, and take the eastern part of Ukraine. And then Trump will wake up from the wrong side of his bed or whatever and say that Ukraine is one that caused the war. Even his American allies, even his Americans, his Democratic Party members that have been tongue-tied, that have been like a defeated people that do not see, that have not been able to challenge Trump's arrogance and Trump's imperialistic rule. This is the first time an American, we're seeing America in an imperialistic way. Look, presidents have come and gone, both Democrats and Republicans. No one has exhibited this arrogance, this level of imperialism. I mean, people are not seeing America as a dictatorial country, whereby you just wake up and you do anything you like, you bypass, because, anyway, you are both parties, you are parties holding both houses of Congress, and they are so afraid to challenge you. I mean, what Nixon did that caused impeachment is not up to 1/10 of what Trump is doing right now. That was when the American Republican Party is the American Republican Party. Not what we are seeing now. Lily-livered men, people that look, this evening, before I come on stage, the press secretary, National Security Advisor was addressing the press in the White House, and the man was evasive on every question. He has no answer to any of the questions. He was evasive. Even what he wrote weeks back before he became the National Security Advisor, the things he wrote against Russia and against Putin, he just recanted. He just recanted. This is what the Americans we know. We know Americans to be people. We know Americans to be people with honor and integrity.
All right, then, Mr. Wilcox.
I don't know how Trump is not exposing.
Mr. Wilcox,
we don't know how Trump is not exposing the real unrealistic nature of the Americans.
Okay, now let's talk about Trump's mineral deal, the one with Ukraine. And Ukraine has refused to sign this deal. What do you say are the merits or maybe the demerits of the deal?
No country, no matter how poor you are, that will be forced down. That a satanic deal will fall down your throat. Now, what is the rush in Trump wanting Ukraine to sign a mineral deal just 1 month into office? What is the rush? The Ukraine is still at war. Are you trying to manipulate Ukraine? Are you trying to intimidate Ukraine? Are you trying to blackmail Ukraine for your own economic advantage? What about the Europeans that have stood by Ukraine? Is America? Yes, America has a superpower. I agree, but is America the only country that stood with Ukraine in these 3 years? So why would you want Ukraine to sign up about 50% of their minerals to America? Is that done anywhere? Is that a fair deal? Is that a fair on the table deal? When we have rules in the world, the World Trade Organization is there. There are various regulatory, there are various rules, there are various conventions that guides how nations should deal with each other. And does Ukraine not have a name, not have a say in what concerns their mineral? Does the president have the absolute power to sign off a deal that is being presented to you, but not a negotiated deal, a deal you sit in the White House and design and just want Ukraine to put their pen the signature? Come on, is that how the world is run?
Would you say that
been an American style? Has that been American culture? This is what China does. This is what Russia can do. These are what non-democratic countries can do.
All right, Mr. Wilcox.
Is that what America is known for?
All right, Mr. Wilcox.
To force deals because you have superpower on the truth of other countries. Come on. That's not how the world works.
So what would you say is the way forward for Ukraine and its EU allies then?
Well, on the short run, Ukraine, the EU allies must continue to rally around Ukraine and begin to keep supporting them militarily, to keep warding off the Russian. Because right now, what Trump is trying to do is to blackmail Ukraine. Switch off. Right now, they are not selling arms to Ukraine anymore. I mean, according to the White House, according to the National Security Advisor, he said because they are having a downward in their stockpiles and all that. And I mean, like I said, the man didn't have any serious response to the questions. So they need to keep supporting Ukraine to continue to ward off Russian aggression. And on the long run, Europe should know that their reliance on America in terms of the NATO alliance is getting threatened by the day. I mean, they saw this coming in the first Trump coming, but nobody knew that the Americans will. I mean, that the Americans will return Trump back to power after the first 4 years of his trying to destroy the world. I mean, the Europeans didn't see it coming. So it is now incumbent on the Europeans to know that they can now take charge of their full security, never to rely on the Americans again. And at the end of the day, the Americans will lose out for it. Right now, Ukraine is the whipping boy here. Tomorrow it could be Poland, because Poland is next door neighbor to Russia. Then you begin to talk about Finland and other places. Before you know it, the Russians will expand and they get to Germany. So that is what America is trying to expose their allies to. So they need to buckle up, keep supporting Ukraine, keep standing with Ukraine, keep making that Ukraine is able to defend its territorial integrity, and in the long run, strengthen their own military capabilities against whatever threat, not to depend and rely on the Americans. But of course, at the end of the day, the Americans will never like this.
The curtain there on
the
this
Americans will never like what is happening, because they knew where their bread is well buttered, and that's with the allies in Europe.
All right, then, Mr. Wilcox, thank you very much for your addition to this topic here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very my pleasure.
We're now going on a short break. When we return, Netanyahu vows to return all hostages and eliminate Hamas. This and more after the timeout. Do stay with us. Now let's cross over to the Middle East, where there are the Hamas handed over 4 coffins containing the remains of Israeli hostages to the Red Cross in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. The handover took place on a staged platform where masked Hamas militants stood in formation as cheering onlookers gathered. 4 black coffins were displayed with a graphic backdrop portraying Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a bloodied vampire looming over images of the deceased. The move comes amid fragile ceasefire talks with renewed efforts to rescue the release of remaining hostages and de-escalate tensions in the region. Meanwhile, Israeli government spokesperson David Menn gave updates on the state of the 4 bodies returned by Hamas. He said the National Institute for Forensic Medicine are working to confirm the identities of the bodies as efficiently and as respectfully as possible. Meanwhile, an Israeli group campaigning for the release of hostages said it had received confirmation that the body of veteran peace activist Oded Lifshitz was among those handed over to by Hamas. This comes as the 3 others are still being identified.
Coffins were transferred to the National Institute of Forensic Medicine for official identification, where they currently are. The IDF are accompanying the families of the deceased at this unbearable time. The National Institute for Forensic Medicine will confirm identities as efficiently and as respectfully as possible, with the priority being our responsibility and compassion for the families. Today, 4 Israeli hostages, our sons and daughters, returned to their families in coffins. Their families and our nation have lived through agony beyond words. They are lives stolen, dreams shattered, and families broken. Their only crime, being Israeli, being Jewish, captured by Hamas in its barbaric assault on October 7th.
Today is a day of mourn in Israel. It's a very sad day for all of us. We hope that they will come back alive, all of them. They were murdered, they were kidnapped from their homes, and we hope that the rest of the hostages will come back soon, as soon as possible, alive. And we hope we won't see this kind of images again.
Now, reacting to the release of the dead hostages, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has renewed his commitment to return all hostages and eliminate Hamas. He renewed the pledge shortly after Israel received the caskets of 4 fallen hostages. Israeli flags lined the route, which a convoy carrying the bodies took from southern Israel to Tel Aviv, following the transfer via the Red Cross. Israel's military said the bodies would undergo an identification process at the city's National Forensics Medicine Institute, where onlookers wept as the convoy arrived.
בית בישראל מרכין היום את ראשו. אנחנו מרכינים את ראשנו על האובדן הכבד של 4 חטופינו. כולנו כואבים בכאב שהוא מהול בזעם. כולנו זועמים על מפלצות החמאס.
Now let's take you to Asia. South Korea's ousted Premier Han Duck-soo has said that he opposed suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol to his declaration of martial law. Now, Han Duck-soo testified for the first time at his former boss's impeachment trial about the material law decree. Han was impeached by Parliament as acting president and prime minister in December over alleged obstructions of the trial that can formally remove Yoon from office for his martial law decree. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Evo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.